Hello, we're going to give you an overview of EDQ. First thing we need to do is we need to see that we have this project browser area here. Then in the middle is the main canvas. On the right hand side is the tool palette. And down at the bottom, results browser. So to create a new project, we right mouse click on projects and select new project. Name of the project is going to be My First Project. Click the next button, finish, and we see we've created a new project called My First Project. We're just going to right mouse click and show selected project only. Click the little plus button on My First Project. We see we have a data store, stage data, processes, and reference data. These are the four entities we're going to deal with today. So the first thing we're going to do is create a data store by right mouse clicking on the data store and saying new data store. And we're going to go to Client and Microsoft Office Files and select Excel. That's the format of our data file. Then we're going to click the little ellipsis button and we're going to go to Data. And we're going to select Personnel Data. Personnel 120. Select it. And we're going to click the test button to make sure we connect to it. Yes, we successfully connected to the specified data store. Click OK. Then we're going to click Next. I'm going to call this Personnel. Click Finish. Next, we're going to create, there it is. There's our personnel data. Now, that's external to the application. Now, we need to load it into EDQ. You don't necessarily have to do that all the time, but since we're beginning this data set with our first project, we're going to right mouse click and create a new snapshot. Use personnel data, click Next. Then see here the headers in the Excel spreadsheet. And we're going to select them all, and select all for the sampling options. Click Next. No reference data needed, and we're going to call this Personnel. Finish. And we look in the project browser, click on the little plus button by stage data, and we see we have Personnel. And if I highlight the Personnel, what shows in the result browser are the data. That means we've loaded into EDQ. So let's now create a process. Right mouse click on Process, select New Process. We're going to work on the personnel data we just loaded from the stage data set. Now, since this is our first project, we're going to add profiling by clicking on this button, and we're adding several profilers. Then we click Next, and we're going to call this My First Process. Click the Finish button, and what appears is several icons. They're called processors. There's the reader icon and several profilers. Now we're going to run this process by clicking the green play button. And it's running. We're going to select the Quick Stats profiler. And when it's finished, I'm going to right mouse click on the processor to show more data. Show results in a new window. And we see that we have the Social Security number, name, street. These are the input fields. We have the record total columns, with data, without data, because if you don't have data in a field, it's possible that is a data quality issue. Singletons, we'll get into that a little bit later. Duplicates, distinct values, and a comment that we add from this profiler. So if we take a look at the Social Security number and we move over here, we see that we have 24 duplicates. Well, that's a potential issue. And if we look at the name, we see we have 5 duplicates. So we need to investigate it a little bit further. But what the reason why we're here is the analytics group said that the gender field was all over the map in their reports. So we need to standardize the gender field to an M for male and an F for male and maybe a U for unknown. So if we look over here the gender field and we scroll on over, we have 69 with data, 57 without data. Well, that's a problem in and of itself. 2 singletons. Well, let me show you what a singleton is. It means we have one value MAL and one value of MLAE in the entire data set. So these are unique values or single values. So we're going to go back, and I just clicked on that blue hyperlink. That means I can drill down into this data. So I'm going to drill down into the distinct values. Here we have for the gender field, we have 10 values, which is wrong. So we're going to click on it and drill down into it, and we see we have these various values. We see what the analytics group was talking about. So what we're going to do is we're going to create some reference data, and based upon the input value of the field, we're going to transform it into an M or an F. In order to create reference data, what I do is I hold my mouse button and I select and drag across the columns, and while it's still selected, I right mouse click and I select create reference data. And so we have one column named gender, but we're going to return another column, and we're going to call that gender standardized. So in order to add another column, we just click on the plus button and we type in gender.standardized. Click the next button, and which columns? Gender.standardized. We need to click on this to make sure it takes. Click next. There it is. All right. Then we have gender using a lookup. Next. Gender standardized is what's going to be returned. Now we haven't created this just yet. We will in the next few minutes. Click next. No data formatting. And we're going to call this my genders. That's the name of our reference data. Finish. And what's going to pop up is the reference data editor, as you can see right here. So here's the F. We're just going to return an F. Now usually we would take care of the M. We would peel off the M's and the F's because they're already taken care of, but here we're just doing it for the demonstration. We're just including them. It's a little bit easier. M, M, F, F, M, M. And this row we're going to take care of later. We're just going to delete it. All right, and we're done. So we click OK. Now we're done with these profilers for right now, so we can regroup them and delete them. Well, they're not deleting on my machine. All right, so now I'm going to look for a lookup and return processor, typing in LOOK or LOO, and those have a lookup and return. Select it. Now here's where the magic happens, and we drag it out onto the main canvas. Let me try and delete this again. So now we're going to hook it up to the spigot, select the mouse, make it turn into a glove, and then drag it into the processor. Now if the processor is red or pink, which means it needs more attention. So this processor requires one or more attributes to be set as input. Well, we're going to input the gender, select it, bring it over, and now it says option lookup reference data is invalid as a required option, so we want to invoke the reference data called my genders that we just created. So we click on the options tab, and in the lookup reference data field we click on the little ellipsis button and we select my genders, click OK, and now this processor is ready to run. So because it's no longer pink or red, now we click the green play button to run this process. And when this process is finished, we highlight the processor and we see we have returned two transform records, two sets, transform records and untransformed. We look at the transform records, we see that female is indeed transformed. And if we go back, click in the back button, we see that the untransformed records, because this is blank, are null. However, we can peel out the title field from the name field and then key off of that by creating new reference data. Use the QuickStats profiler, set up the distinct set, a distinct value set, and then create reference data from that, and then return a male or a female based upon the title. So let's split this out from the name field because we can't get to it right now. So we're going to use an unstructured name parser, select it, drag it out onto the main canvas, move the cursor over the spigot or the little arrow, drag it into the next processor, and the input we need is a name, right? Select the name, shuttle it over to the panel, click OK. Now inside this processor is you need to connect the wires. There's an attribute called full name. There could be more attributes, and it doesn't know which input you want to tie it to. So we have to select the input, which is name. Click OK, and we're done with the parser. Now let's run the process. Select the unstructured name parser. The results will show up down at the bottom. And we're going to select on the data field down here at the bottom. And look at our data. We split it out. See, so we have Mrs. Mary Hill was split out into a Mrs., which is P1 prefix. Mary is P1 underscore first. Last name Hill. Great parsing job. So now we have these data, and we can create our reference data set. But let's wait a second here. If we go over to our tools palette and we just type in gender, we find that there's a processor called add gender, which we can use. So let's use that. We'll select the add gender processor, drag it out onto the main canvas, hook up the spigots or the little arrows, hover over the arrow and drag it into the processor. Hover over the arrow and drag it into the processor. There we go. And we need title, forename, and stated gender. So title, if you remember, was the P1 underscore prefix. So we select that and click the arrow to shuttle it over into the field. P1 first was forename. Shuttle that over, and we're going to use the original gender as specified, and we'll shuttle that over. Now notice that we have these various genders based upon where they came from as output attributes. Click OK, run the process. Select the add gender processor to show results down at the bottom, and what we see is from a best gender we have done all of them. All are either F or M, the entire data set. We look at the data, you see that indeed, look at this, Dr. Phyllis Ford Jr. Oops, that's bad. It was a female. That did a good job. And that concludes our live sex demo.